Samech Vav, Hemshech Samech Vav, base Shvat, page Kuf Hey. Like the wrong thing?
I bought the wrong section. It's already by me, that's all. Good. But when I'm teaching, I'm more used to teaching out of the Sefer.
Oh,
okay. I use that for reference occasionally. I'm sorry. We get on to the union of the two aliyahs which are going to be the Yosid Loza. And we saw that there would be an aliyah Ha'aleph into the Tainug HaPashut Yatzmusa is Barak, but it still will be able to come Murgash. It will still be eventually felt by the Nivroim and the Mikablim Mia Kodesh Baruch. The Yilud Aliyah HaBeis will be an Aliyah into the Tainug HaPashut HaBilti Murgash Tainug Kol Mamish Patz Musay, and the Eibusha will be mashpia that Tainug to the Nivroim in a way that will be Lamaila from what we understand the concept of being built. In other words, that the Aliyah will be in a losing of the self altogether, absolutely. Why are you sitting there like that way? I mean, usually
There's more people around and gets
people are just little frail human bodies that are able to move a little bit, squeeze themselves. It's put down in the Gemara that the reward Agra the Kala Deichach, that's the Gemara Masechtas Brachas, near the beginning. That they used to, we had almost the Maturgaman. That's when they used to need the Maturgaman. They brought all the people together 3 times a year and they give them Regalim to learn with the Chachamim. So it was such a huge group that there was a big stupidness, a big push. So the Gemara says that the reward that the people got, one of the reasons the Eibusha rewarded them was for the stupidness, the fact that they allowed themselves to be stupid in order to hear the Divrei Torah. So whoever was in 770, by a Farbrengen, he knows very well, this is the Pshat Agra, the Farbrengen is Deichach. I don't know if everybody gets the quips, but anyway, I'm sure you get the idea. So, we saw that there's going to be an Aliyah HaBeis, and that will be an Azah Oineg, which will be so immense that it won't be feelable by the Nivroim, but they will just go completely into that Tainug in an even from Bittul Kol Metzius Legamri. And that's what we call the Tainug HaPashut, which is not even Bo B'Murgash, and that's Kol Mamish Patz Musay. So we saw that according to that, Al Pizeh Yuvan Medrasish Chalukim, where we find apparently disagreeing drushes of our sages Be'inyan Olam Haba, in reference to what will be the whole situation and the whole state at the time of Le'achrei Tchiyas HaMeisim. Olam Haba in the Gemara and in the Mishnah, B'derech Klal means after Tchiyas HaMeisim. We saw that Medrash Echad says Shiyasa HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sa'udah, and we brought down about that. It's a Medrash in Vayikra Labo, where it talks about the Suda that the Eibusha will make with the Shor Haba and the Leviosan, and the Leviosan will slaughter the Shor Haba. The whole reason in the Gemara Masechta Pesachim, by the way, right near the end, describes what will be when they complete that Suda, that there will be Bilchas Hamazon, how to go benching and to whom they will give the cost to lead the bench with a whole. If it's wrong with him, he'll say no, he's not worthy, and all the three others, and eventually he'll get to David HaMelech. I said the David HaMelech will take the cost, and he'll say that he believes in all modesty that he's worthy to bench. And so the one who bench will be Dafki David HaMelech. Yeah. I say you bring the whole Arichas about the Birchas HaMazen out to the Sudas for Levios. So it's going to be Mamish a Su'uda, which means that it'll be shy to what appears to be describable as Achila and Shtio, eating and drinking. Ubikimora, or it's a Gemara Masechta Brachas, Isa, it appears to Eilam Habo, Ein Boi, Loi Achila, Veloi Shashia. The Gemara says that after Tchias HaMeisim there won't be any eating or any drinking at all. So it's an apparent contradiction. So now we're going to resolve that contradiction with these two madrigas in the Tainu Liasi. The Inyan Sudas Levioson Vasher Abo Shiir Liosid, that'll be after Tchias HaMeisim. Zeh B'chinas Tainu Va'atzmi Habo B'murgash. That represents the first level and the first aliyah that there will be liosid. It represents a tremendously delicately high form of the gilui, the Eibush's tainu, but it'll still be sensible and it'll be able to come some appreciation to the Mekablim how they are in Shomas Begufim, even though of course it'll be very high and elevated Gufim, but nonetheless it will come to them and it will be mislavish in their understanding and in their feeling and in their koyach hatainu b'taimei Torah, through the medium of appreciating the inner tamim of the Torah. And we saw that Liyosid, the main influence is going to be not so much on the understanding how it's hidden in that word tam, but in the oineg, in the tainu, which is hidden in the word tam. The word tam has got the two implications, and so the ikka understanding of all the pnimius are reasons and the pnimius are ionim in Torah, the Yosid, will be ikka through the Inyan ha-oinim. Thanks. And not so much in the Inyan of Seichel. V'zehu aliyah ha-aleph. That is the first great aliyah which will occur, the Yosid Lovei, in the Neshamas in Gufim, how they will be after Tchias HaMeisim, that they will be masig the inifant taimei Torah. And as we said, that those taimim mean the inner reasons and the inner pnimius and the inner understandings of those inyonim adein shir l'mayla, but be'ikar that will express itself in oineg, and in fulfillment and pleasure, divine pleasure and fulfillment. And that's going to be the first aliyah, she'iyah gili prinas atayna va'atzmi ha'nelam, how it's hidden inside the atmas, but it'll be in a form of gili b'muragash. Avo masha omar ha'elam habo ein boi achila u'shasiyah u'inyan aliyah ha'beitz u'prinas asher or actually one should really read it without the proper pronunciation, asher, but that's a way of making it so we don't say, because those are holy names. Well, that's the name of the Eibishter, I will be. As it's brought down, you had it 2 weeks ago in Parashat Shmois, that when Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Eibishter what is his name, then he said to him that my name is, I will be what I shall be. Asher, what that means literally, I will be what I will be. So there's a very famous Rashi over there, which you're doubtless familiar with. Rashi says that the Eibishter said to Moshe Rabbeinu that K'moshe ani itcho v'itam v'tzorazu, in the snare he revealed himself he's with them in this whole thing of the Shiabud in Mitzrayim. Kain Eya Itam, I'll be with it. He said, B'tzoros habois, in future troubles. So Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eibush, well, I've got to mention too, there's going to be future troubles. He said, Dayo, Tzora B'shaito, that's enough to talk about one Tzora at its own time. Everybody's familiar with the famous Rashi that it looks as if Moshe Rabbeinu, as it were, corrected the Eibush, and he said, wait a minute. So the great Meforshim talk about that at great length, as is well known, and I think we even had a shiur closely about it a few years ago. I can't remember which year exactly it was. I don't remember what I said last year. I was supposed to remember what year it was. But anyway, we did have a shiur closely about it. Anyway, so he says, well, that's handy if it says something. I don't remember what I said last year. I could maybe say the same thing. Anyway, yeah, but who Prinus Asher. Now that's said to be a very, very high madrega, and the Ramban talks about over there in the Chumash, and the other great Rishonim, that the Shem Echya is in a way even higher than the Shem Havaya, because the Shem Havaya is a shame which indicates itself through protim, through details of the Sfiras Aliyah and Atzilas, and the Sfiras and Atzilas are mamish miyuchad with the Eibush. Therefore, that Shem is considered miyuchad itoi betachlis ha'ir, Shem ha'miyuchad, etc. But when the Eibush says Echye Asher, Echye, I will be what I will be, he's not talking about any prat, but he's talking about how the Etzem is beyond all details, and it's just what it is, and it's always been that way, and it always will be that way. In other words, a gilui which is more like a terminology for the atzmus mamish rather than for a name of the atzmus. In other words, not really so much a name, but a description of the what you might call the unlimitedness of the atzmus. And therefore, not oddly, but pointedly enough, it's in the future. He says, the Eibush says, Echye Asher Echye. In other words, that this is too high and it's beyond any ability to be normally revealed. Therefore, once Moshe Rabbeinu said to him, wait a minute, so then it's written afterwards that the Eibush said to Moshe Rabbeinu, it'll be enough if you say it one time round. Just say Echye. In other words, it's somewhat, as you might say, the Eibush Kaviyohu tuned it down somewhat, that it would be more easy for the people to understand and to grasp to what was being referred. In other words, that the Eibush is saying that at any point I will be, meaning not only I'll be eternal, but I will be in a way that will always be beyond you somewhat. It will always be to the future. Echye. In other words, in a way that you always have to elevate yourself and be beyond yourself in order to grasp it, no matter what madrega you'll be holding on. This is the simple pashtus of the union. And therefore, that's what he meant here, according to what the Rebbe is teaching now, that we're talking about Liyosid Beklal. Yes, yeah, means Beklal I will be, not right now, but it's going to be in the Gili of Liyosid, and in that Gufa he says, Asher, in other words, I'm going to be what I'm going to be, but there's going to be a lot more beyond that altogether, all over again, as it were. Echya, and then there's going to be Asher Echya, what I'm going to be, Legavi, what I'm going to be. So the Rebbe says, that's B'diuk what we're trying to bring out. There's going to be an aliyah which we can't describe it now. We can only hint at it. We're going to say that's going to be the aliyah in the Tainug HaAtzmi HaMugat, and then in that itself there's going to be another tremendous aliyah into the second form, Daragya, in the divine Tainug, where it's going to be completely beyond any muragash in the sense of the Nivroim really being a vessel or an ability to be masik that affiliate yasi. And therefore it's brought down in Siddur, and it's Mavur, and it's Nagir to this particular Indian here, those two names, the Shem Echye sometimes refers to Bina, or in Bina Gufa to what we call Pnimius Bina, and sometimes it refers to Atik, which is the Indian from Oine and Tainu. And there's a certain Gilui anyway of Atik in Bina, as well known that we see when a person has a havana and he understands and appreciates something in Binus, then he gets a tremendous tainuk, even more than what he had in a way in Chokhmah. And that's because they have a connection, Bina, with, and therefore that's a connection of these two names to Liosid Lovet, Dafkit, to the future, which is going to be Bisman, Tchias HaMesim, Bi'ika, because it's brought down in the Zohar Kodesh that Elam Haba is Bina. Elam Haba is Dini from Bina, because it's going to be Tamei Torah, but in that will be the Ika, the Gilead Tainuk in the Tamei Torah, and then there's going to be an Aliyah into Atik Mamish, even higher than what he is in Atik, not in Atik Gufa, Lamailami Atik, in the Inif and Tainuk Atzmiah Aposhut. It fits in very nicely, those two Biurim, with the two Shemesh, Echia, Asher, Echia. So that's Aliyah HaBeis. The Leyacha Gila begins at Tainuk Atzmiah B'Chokhmah the Torah. After the Giluim of the Union of the Tainuk, how it's still connected al Chapanim with Chokhmah, albeit we saw that the Union from Chokhmah, how it is B'Shor Harishin, the Union from the Atzmisha B'Chokhmah. Nonetheless, it's still got a certain kesher with the Union of Tainuk, how it comes into a Union from Sphira. However, after that, Ano Zamin Li Iskaloa. That's what's written in the Zohar Kodesh, but kesher is the word Echye, well, I'm going to be. So the Zohar teaches it that I am at a time going to reveal myself. I know Zamin Li Isgaloa, meaning in the future. Zamin for Lashon Zman. But it's not yet the Zman. I'm going to at some point reveal myself. And that's exactly what we're teaching. That the Ike Shem Ech is going to be Begirul Yosid, and in that Gufa Echye, and then another one Asher Echye. So he said that afterwards, I'm going to go up even higher. In other words, that even after I've given you one in the Tainuga Amurgash B'Chokhmah, I'm then going to go up even further into the Tainuga Abilti Murgash. Even it's not even experienceable in the infant Taimei Torah. Well, from that we see, and we're going to deal with it very shortly, that there's a madrega which comes as a form of fulfillment and an eventual result from the infant Torah or mitzvahs and Yiddishkeit Beklau, which is going to be, as it were, beyond the infant Yiddishkeit itself. It's going to be beyond the infant Torah and mitzvahs, because we say it's not even shy to the Tamei HaTorah HaMitzvah, but you can't have higher than that. That's the highest pnimis v'atzmis of the Torah mitzvah. And that's mashma, that there's some Indian that Yidden have this ability to go up into Zamin Liskaloa, even higher than the infant Tamei Torah, into something which is mamish kolol bi'atzmusay. We'll see about that in very, very short coming episodes. Zehu she'ein boy achila shtia. That means as I level in Elam Haba won't be any achila shtia. She'ein haba murgash, it can't come into the experience of the Nivroim at all. It's a very amazing and high, madrega that Yidden are going to be involved at a certain point in Elam Haba. Here it's mashma, there's like two steps, like two madregas are going to be in two different periods almost. There'll be the period of Elam Haba Stam, and then there'll be a new Aliyah, Zomin Lizgaloa, it's going to be a further step. But either in some places it's mashma that it's all going to take place at one time. That even though the klolus will be that Elam Haba ein bo lo yachilu lo yishusiyah, but nonetheless the Abish is going to make a Suda just the same. And the Rebbe's got all the big arichas about that. And when I get to the Inif and Suda Shlishi, yes, that it's brought down in Sudas on Shabbos. We're going to mention Shabbos just in a second here. But the Inif and Suda Shlishi is the minig in Lubavitch was not to eat. Was not, is not. The minig in Lubavitch is not to eat. Nowadays I don't really see many people eating klal, but certainly not a Suda. And the Rebbe Rasha brings down in Hayom Yom that he said you should eat a little something, but you don't wash for past, you don't eat bread and the whole thing. And they brought down this famous taich in the Posik over there, Ichlu Hayoim Ki Shabbos Hayoim Hayim Loi Timtau V'Sodeh. So the Gemara says in Shabbos, that's almost the 3 Sudas. So for the last Suda, it's written Hayim Loi Timtau. You won't find the man. So the famous taich from the Alter Rebbe, Hayim Loi, there's one Madrega where today is not the time for the bread, even though that's one of the rayas that there is such a thing as a Suda. But Hayim Loi means you don't have to eat the bread of the Suda. It's like a Suda which is not a Suda. So the Rebbe, that's one of the, in Pnimis, that's the Aliyah Osid. Aliyah in the highest Madrega, there was no chayach, not any form of Philistia. But he said the truth is that the Yiddish guf is still going to exist. It's going to be gufim as an indication of that the Jewish body still got a certain value by Eibishter. There's going to be a trace of a Suda. There's going to be the Suda between the Leviyot to show that, don't forget that there is such a thing as a guf, and it's got a certain importance, and there will be a certain inyan, which was what, like in the old days, the guf used to partake a certain minyanim from on a tremendously high level, and then from then on it'll just continue that there's no achila v'shtia. But here it's mashma that there's 2 like periods. It's a period where it'll be still shayach ha'inif and levios and v'shur haba, and the Suda of them, and that's like an experience of something, like a feeling. And then it's going to be asher echye aliyah into a higher madrega where it's not even shayach any form of achila shtia at all. So that's an interesting inyan. And the Rebbe, what does he not do, and what does he not notice, and what did he not pick up? It's unbelievable antenna. And the Rebbe's got a whole series of footnotes about this, In Samech Vav it appears 2 periods, and in other places it appears not, and what do we do about that, etc., etc. So maybe we'll talk about that at some future point, Be'ez Hashem. Hopefully already in the time we'll already be in Yemais HaMashiach, maybe not yet in Mamish and Elam Haba, and then we'll be able to be Mefalpu, or Chaponim to hear Biurim from the Rebbe, and Mashiach Piatzmei, Inyanim similar to doves. However, says the Rebbe, V'zehu ki'in shekosu, this is like what is written in Shir HaShirim. It's written in Perek Hey, in Shir HaShirim, Ichlu re'im, that you good neighbors, you must eat. Ichlu, it's a imperative, eat. And then it's written, Shesu v'shichru doidim, and they call good friends should drink and even become shikha somewhat. That's what it appears. Shesu v'shichru doidim. In other words, that there's going to be a form of achila ushtia, and that is tight by the Zohar Kodesh, is referring to the matzav also. That's going to be liosid or al chaponim in very high madreg, similar to liosid, and that's the famous. Well, I don't know. There's 2 psukim. The famous Bosi Lagani, Choyishikalo, that's what the Rebbe said, the Friedrich Rebbe just started the famous Maimah. Well, this Posik also begins with that expression, Bosi Lagani, Choyishikalo, and then Behemshech had used that expression, Ichlu Reim Ushusu, Doidim, V'ishu Bezoya, and it's written in the Zoya, I will be Asrei, but in his place, Lav Ucher LeMichal, but in the place where he is, Asrei, it's not the way or the proper way to eat. You don't eat in that madrega. So, what is he teaching? He says that there's one level where it's proper to say eat and drink. Ichlu reim shusu doidim. So, Chassidus, Alter Rebbe, Barichas, and Kotei Torah teaches that Ichlu reim is referring to Chochmah or Bina, because they're called reims, as well known. They're always united together. Chochmah is nimshach into Bina, B'yichud Godel. So there's 2 madregas in the Yichud of Chochmah Bina. So they're like the reim. And therefore, the Yosid Lovid is going to be a madrega where you'll be, as it were, eating through Chochmah or Bina. So you won't mamish be eating Gashim Stikazachen, but it'll be called Achila or Shtia, because you'll still be aware of it. You'll still be masing the time the time of Torah. But, says the Zohar, in his place, that's going to be in your place, or in the Eibishter's place, be Asrei, yeah, there's not going to be, where the Eibishter is on his own, then there's no eating whatsoever up there. Yeah, it's taught in another place. One of those other places is the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe when he talks about Yom Kippur. We'll soon come to that. The disunion of the neighbors eating together. I know it's Chochma Bina. That's the union of Ta'amim Malchoponim. Aval be Asrei in the Eibishter's very place. Yeah, what that is Bechinas Atik. Yeah, what Asrei means. The Matzil himself, but that's the Eibishter, is Lav Uchel Michal. It's not the place, it's not the derech, or not derech to eat at all. V'ainu, Kenal, Kenis Kelil, the Bechinas Taina V'achmi Kishabo, Bechinas Elam V'achmi, the Chochma, when it comes into the Shurish Adini from Chochma, which is still a form of Gilu in the form of Tamim, Sham Shayach in Achila. In other words, Tamei Torah, Vainu Shabab, Finas Eina Gamurgas. I will be Asrei in the very place of the Eibishter himself, Finas Atik Atzmei, in the very Madrega of Atik, which is Pnimius Akesa, or it's what we call the Bechina of the Matzil himself. Shalei Bo Bechinas Pnimius Abo, not that Indian from Atik which is able to come down into Pnimius Abba and be a Mamutza with the Nivroim, but like we saw that's as our level, but it's completely beyond, because we saw that Pnimius Abba, he Pnimius Atik, that means Atik at least came down and was Yoyed to be Nimsa Beina and Tzolim. But Atik itself is beyond the whole, his Chabrus or the whole Yerida into Pnimius Atik. If we go even higher than Kori and Atik, into the very first source of such a level, but that's the scholars of the Oinig, Mamish in the very essence of Hashem. That's not derech eretz, so not proper, it's not the way to eat in such a level. That's not given, or won't be given out from the Eibishter, that you can share that in any form of feeling or awareness. That's the union from the Asrei Lav Uchel Michal. So now we need to sort of work out how can we sort of in some way picture these two madregas, and where do we find them in what you might call our normal comments experience. How can we some way sort of indicate or find two ways that we can appreciate the difference between these two forms of Gilui Ha'oinik from the Eibishter. So we're now going to draw an amazing difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippurim. And just suffice it to say, it's well known, the famous story that was brought down in several places in Chassidus, how when David HaMelech finally got the Oren back from the Plishtim, you know that once the Oren went out to war, Rashi brings it in Pasuk Eikev, that the Oren, Kodesh Yosef Batal, you know, the Oren from the Mishkan, was taken out to war and was captured by the Plishtim. And there was a whole business. They brought it back from the Plishtim eventually, and then it caused a sort of a capade on a certain person, and David HaMelech felt that wasn't a freilich moment to bring it up into all the pomp and splendor. And then eventually, a certain while later, he brought the Oren Kodesh all the way up to Yerushalayim, and he put it inside a special oihel with the whole arichas. And after that, he decided there was something in an oihel. He has to put it inside a proper building, and he began the whole plan of the Beis Hamikdash. He David HaMelech began personally getting together all the material, but the actual building took place through his son Shlomo HaMelech. So it's written that when they brought the Oren up it was accompanied by tremendous rejoicing, unbelievable and unlimited rejoicing. And it's brought down that David HaMelech danced personally in front of the Oren, and the Rambam brings it down at the end of Hilchos Purim, Rambam mentions that there are certain David HaMelech was mafazes u'makar lifnei oren bris Hashem. What it means that he was, how do you call it, dancing in such a way that he went out of completely of normal limitations, and he was even whistling, according to one beer that he even used the push of whistling. But that's one of the things that when the Rebbe encouraged the idea of whistling. On certain occasions, that's one of the rayas that he brought. Anyway, David HaMelech was completely in another world in the dancing that took place then. And Ad Kedi Kach, it's well known that Shaul HaMelech's family, one of his daughters was still remained B'chayim. She felt that she looked out the window and she felt that wasn't even proper coverage for a melech, a king of the Jewish people to dance in such a way. And so she even told him later that she felt that it was improper. And he said, "No, you didn't understand." And he said, "If I could have done even more, I would have done even more." So it's brought down and said that that's the union of Tainuga. Ha'elyon, ha'kol, b'teichayetzim, a poshut, but it's still boba murgash. In other words, it came in the form of simcha, moving of the volume and all those inyonim, but it was almost beyond awareness and normal awareness of what was happening. So now you can picture what it means. The tiny habilti murgash means you just lose your matzias altogether, and you're just not feeling in the normal way. You're just completely dovel in the Eibishter, or in whatever in connected with the Kilei Lakus it may be, where there'll be absolutely no normal awareness like we talk about now. So that's if you take that whole thing that happened with David HaMelech and you try to go higher than that, you can picture how that happened. It's even brought down in the Nach of Barichas, and the Rambam brings it was the whole greatness of David HaMelech that he did that. The Rambam was Mashaber, very high, the whole Ritas at the end of Hilchos Purim, but then we can somehow or another form in our minds, we can form sort of a picture of how you could go from one level to the other in these Inyoni HaTainuk. So as now says the Rebbe, we can bring within what you might call the life of Yiddishkeit itself two examples of these forms of Tainuk. And he says, let's make a start, that these are the two inyonim, v'zehu gam kein ha'hefresh bein Shabbos liyom Purim. This difference between these two levels in Oineg, well, that is the difference between Yom HaShabbos and Yom Kippur. The Shabbos mitzvah like angoi b'achilu shtir. It's a mitzvah to bring Tainug into Shabbos by eating and drinking. It's one on the Sudei Shabbos, Arini from Tainug, and Tainug Shabbos, achilu shtir. The Alter Rebbe brings about in Perek Zayin in Tanya. The Hupkinas ha'oineg ha'achmi. It's a very, very high level. Shabo b'murgash. It's a tremendously high level, but it comes into an awareness and a feeling. Okay, the achila this Shabbos ain't bo ta'arivus ra klal. It doesn't have any mixture of evil in it at all. Akamoya achila delay, like the eating which will be after Moshiach comes, or maybe more exactly in this moment of Tefillah Samech. So here we see a very an amazing thing on the union of Shabbos. Shabbos is an aliyah into such a very high level of Oineg, and yet nonetheless is a mitzvah of Achila U'Shasiyah of Amira, having to say to eat and drink in the normal way on such a high day like Shabbos. It's mixing a type of Gashimistic Inyan into such a high level, and you might even say, well, in Pneumius it's in Birudim, being Varer. So it's brought down on Shabbos. There's no real Inyan from Biru. You can't really be Varer things on Shabbos like you do in the weekday, because Pneumius, Bechitanius, the Malacha of Boira is one of the forbidden Lamentes Malachas on Shabbos. You can't separate one thing from a nadya, particularly not a good thing from a good thing. Erefa, it's not really Shaykh Birur either. So even though the Alter Rebbe says in the Siddur there is a form of Birur on Shabbos, and also it's Mavur in other parts of it, but it's a very delicate and high form of Birur. It's not Shaykh Tzimul Birur. It's what we call Eichel Mitoich Eichel. It's not Eichel Mitoich Tzelis, and Chosh Kem Kal Chem is not Tzelis Mitoich Eichel. So anyway, what's eating of a Chilu Shtia doing in Shabbos? Wouldn't it be better just not to eat on Shabbos, and particularly the foods on Shabbos, or they have to do with Klippus Neiga? What is it bringing Klippus Neiga on Shabbos supposed to be already higher than all these inyanim, etc., etc. So the Rebbe says no, that the Achila on Shabbos ain't boy tarivas ra klal. You know what I mean? Yeah? Let's say eat a bit of kugel, it's made out of things such Klippus Neiga. Say, oh no, Shabbos ain't. What does he do it? So that means you can just pack in on Shabbos. So the truth is that the Rebbe Marash said that even if he packs in on Shabbos, he says, oh, this is a good opportunity to really have a good, shmake bis. And he takes these things and really enjoys them physically. The Rebbe Marash said, Afu Pikein ein yanika klippa or lara mizeh. It's not going to damage anything. It's only that he is not experiencing them in a way that he could really. But he's not causing any yanika to the clippers. So I saw the shadow really doing. How's it?
Does that include also before davening?
Yeah.
Does that include before davening?
You're always worried about before davening. You have to leave it alone. They should realize that the Rebbe said it's one of the minhogi hachsidim. He said the minhogim for the chsidim konen chatten. They can't do any damage. So whatever is yechila for Shabbos, that achila. The Rebbe said it's from the minhogim from the chsidim.
What about the story with the Baal Shem though, when they saw some guy eating his shoreline and then they pulled their hands together and they said,
very good kasha. That's a good kasha. He was eating, he wasn't eating Shabbos Friday night. He didn't eat Sholem on Friday night. He was eating a soup, I think it was. He was eating like a shmach Shabbos soup or something. So they saw him like an ox with a strimal on the head. That's what you're finding?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Very good question. So let's go step by step. Let's first of all answer what we want to say, and then we'll answer that question also. But when we get to answering that question, then we're going to bring it from the Rebbe Miller and we'll share you guys are going to have to hold your tables in order not to go out. But you guys are very moichantic, so I don't think I've got any concern about that. But anyway, there's a very famous story, and it's brought down in Derech Mitzvah Secha. It's brought down in a Maimah. In Derech Mitzvah Secha, that when the Alter Rebbe was already in that small we described on Koch Talatez, he went to the house of the Skoy. That's where he was mistalik. Moitze Shabbos Koch Talatez is the Tamil Tzedek was more or less alone with the Alter Rebbe. The middle Rebbe wasn't there, and there was only a few members of the Alter Rebbe's household were there. So the Rebbe Tamil Tzedek had these couple of amazing conversations with the Alter Rebbe prior to his passing. So he asked the Alter Rebbe that question. And he said, how can you say that the eating on Shabbos is such a high eating and ain't by ta'arivas? You take a piece of potato and you make a kugel, or you take, bread and you make chavas out of it, and you have to look at it's the same wheat and the same potatoes and things, and now we just use it to make that. So it must have in itself klippus neiga, ta'arivas teva. But when you eat it, you're going to have to fight the ra and look after the teve. So it's eating from ta'arivas teva. How can you say, oh no, I ain't boy ta'arivas ra klal. It's the same piece of something that it was before Shabbos came in. Now it's the same piece of potato. It just changed its address. There was a piece of potato, now it's inside a kugel, it's inside a soup or a chesed. Anyway. So the Alter Rebbe answered him, an amazing thing. The Alter Rebbe said, Ein nachanami, it's the same piece of potato, but it's not. And he said, Ein zer near l'riyah se'nayim agashmi yis. He said, the physical eyes can't see, but he said, a tremendous change takes place in all the physical foods. They're going to be used by Yidden on Erev Shabbos. A great change takes place in them, and they are no longer under the control of Klippus Neiga, and the closer you get to Shabbos, it's drifting off. By the time it comes into Shabbos, the whole Inyaf and Tarivus Ra Mitzad Klippas Nega disappears from all the food that Yidden are going to use on Shabbos. You don't see it, and he says that's what's written in the Zohar HaKodesh. Put down in the Zohar HaKodesh that why do you have to wash yourself dafki in hot water? On Erev Shabbos, dafki a mitzvah lilchait. It's a goof b'mayim chamim. So it could be that you guys are so busy with Mitzvah, by the time you get back, you don't have a chance to be married, and that in it could be have to do it. If it's reasons, unless you're supposed to wash yourself in hot water on Erev Shabbos, and there was some Gedolei Israel that they really used to get stuck into it. They used to mamish boiling hot water and throwing themselves in it. All sorts of amazing mamish heiss of us in Kipshute. So I'm not recommending that anybody be too mahada in that eating, but you're supposed to use hot water. So it's put down as a Kodesh Fagusha, because after Chatzai Sayyim, and the more you approach towards the coming in of the Shabbos, then there goes out a pulse in Ohera, how do you call it, like a bolt of fire. A heavy bolt of fire goes out from heaven, and it burns away all the klippas nega from all the gashmis of Yidden, all the physical things that Yidden are going to use. This pillar of fire burns away the klippas nega. And when you put the hot water on the body, it washes away all the klippas nega, the achiza, from the klippas in your goof. They state that. And Mamela, you can come into Shabbos with a goof tahor, and all the things that you're going to use, they've all been purified from klippas nega. As I tell the Mamish a couple of hours before the established, the Alter Rebbe told the Tzemach Tzedek this whole union, and so therefore it's not what it appears. It looks to be the same piece of potato. It's not what it was before cloud, because this whole fire goes out from heaven and burns away all the klippas noiga before Shabbos comes in, and that's the dugman. The symbol of that is this union of washing the limbs of the body in hot water. Huh? I'm not talking about Suda Shlishi.
No, I'm saying,
well, we haven't reached Suda Shlishi, so we're talking about Erev Shabbos now.
No, but
What it means is that when you eat on Shabbos, and Ein by Tarevas, cloud. And therefore the Rebbe Mar said that even if somebody would take it the other way around, and he would eat just for the satisfaction of really enjoying it, really packing in, as they say, on Shabbos, there wouldn't be any unique clips. There wouldn't be any unique ra, because whether he wants it or not, the food is purified. There's not going to be any unique dvarim abilti rutzuim mizeh. That doesn't mean that you can all pack in and have a good time on Shabbos and all just, gishmak aweda with all sorts of inyonim. That's not what it means. What it means, even if cholila that happens, it wouldn't cause any bilti rotzei. But of course, you're supposed to eat them with the right, recognition of what's going on. Even though, you have to eat with pashtas. So, therefore, that's the Indian, what the Rebbe says here, that the eating on Shabbos, in the Chilu Shtia, Ein Boi Ta'aruvas, Ra doesn't have the mixture of evil in it at all, and similar to the Achila Dili Osi. And therefore, and Dafki there's a, we say, invention, Rachamanu is a kelim, Liyom Shekula Shabbos and Menucha L'Chayei, Eilam and Liyom Shekula Shabbos. So Liyosi, it's going to be, everything's going to be, the whole time it's going to be Kula Shabbos, but it would appear that it's only going to be Mi'ain Eilam Habo. Shabbos is not really the Madrega from Eilam Habo, but it's Mi'ain Eilam Habo. It's similar to Eilam Habo, because in Eilam Habo, you're not going to be able to eat any Yiddish kugel. It's going to be way down. It's going to be much lower Madrega. And Liyosid, there's not going to be any eating at all. And the tiny, and the eating, he says, wait a minute, no, but that's what it's going to be. The Sherabah and the Levios, and you eat them only at the beginning. He says that over here, it's like one stage. Now the Levi see a cloud, and that's we're going to meet up soon with Suda Shlishi, is according to Shvat. Suda Shlishi is like a meeting point of the two. On the one hand, it's still Shabbos, but on the other hand, it's already the Madrega from Yom Kippurim, and it's already the Madrega from Mamish Li'achid. Whatever you don't eat anything on Suda Shlishi yet, but the Rebbe Rashab says you should eat a little chantics. Right? And in the old days, I remember when I first came to Ratzor, they used to give out a little bit of mazenas, about this big, for all the guys in the south. Either just before mincha or just after, they used to give out a little bit of mazenas. Everybody very virtuously, you make a bite of mazenas and make a bracha if it was big enough. Without a shield, with a kazayah, he would make a bracha, and then we said, the whole, from Shul Shlishi, with the Maimah, with the ganze, Arichas, what you might call, nowadays they call it Seder Nigunim. In other words, that's like it has to be a little te'ima. The Rebbe Rashab said it has to be a little te'ima, but really you're not anymore on the madrega from eating and drinking. You're already up on a much higher madrega, which is the union from Suda Shlishi. Yes, or since about that, in a minute we'll come to that. In other words, that the union of Suda Shlishi is more Ilam Habo than it is Shabbos. And the rest of Shabbos is the other way. The rest of Shabbos is more Shabbos than it is Ilam Habo. However, the union of Suda Shlishi is already gone up into such a level that it's already more Ilam Habo than it is Shabbos. So that's the union. The Achila on Shabbos, I know if he says, oh, Pinas Tainuga Achmi, Lochain, and Bezet Tariv, it's clear. Since it's a Tainuga Achmi, it's a Tainuga the Ebishter, Mitzadatz Mose, therefore there can't be an Eta. As the Alter Rebbe said, that not only they can't be, but they allow it, they burn it all out. And because there's this huge spiritual blowtorch on her Shabbos, but burns away all the clippers. There you go. And therefore it's able to go up into the Tainuga Achmi, because it doesn't have any ra. But we said B'Yom Kippurim, but we see it on Yom Kippur. Also b'chila u shesiyah. It's forbidden. The union from achila u shesiyah. V'hu k'moya olam habo she'ein bo achila u shesiyah. In other words, that Yom Kippur is mamish the madrega of li asid li achar tchilas ha'meisim, but there won't be any achila u shesiyah at all. V'adarabah. Tzorik la nois nafshoi behei inuyim, that you have to, how do you call it, afflict your soul on the zini, what's called inui on Yom Kippurim. The whole mitzvah from Yom Kippurim is not fasting. The mitzvah from Yom Kippur is inui. So the Gemara says maybe inui. The Gemara is chaycha v'derech, and that only comes after a big discussion in Masechta Yuma that really means not to eat. It's not written on Yom Kippur that you're not allowed to eat, or it's not written fast. It's written you have to be afflict your soul. So there's even one opinion in the Gemara. Maybe it means just to sit in the sun or something, get a sunstroke, afflict yourself, do something to afflict yourself on Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara, no, what it really means is not to eat or to drink. Yeah, and then there's these other four inuim. Yeah, for example, you're not allowed to wash yourself in any way, and you're not allowed to marital relations, for example. Other inyanim are forbidden on Yom Kippur. How do you call it? Sikha, to smear shemen on yourself. That's called sikha. Is Bamela, those are all forbidden. And it's a whole big discussion in the Gemara whether they're in Torah or whether on Midabonim, but there's 5 ways. And that's connected the 5 tefillas on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur there's 5 davenings. Because there's an extra tefillah called tefillas Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur. That's connected the 5 different ways of afflicting literally the body. Yom Kippur is mamish me'ein olam habo. It's that tainug that doesn't come into any form of murgash at all. Therefore, any form of tainug which would come into our gosher is forbidden on Yom Kippurim. V'adarabah. Tzarich liyo is inui. It has to be the union of self-affliction. Hefech ha'oineg hamuragash. Yeah, which is the opposite of felt tainug. Now, for that it would appear that the Rebbe doesn't mean that this inui is really inui. He said you've got to afflict your normal way of experiencing. That's what you've got to afflict. Yeah, and from that you can move up into the tainug amiti of Yom Kippurim. Therefore, v'nisem k'maish v'nisem es nafshei seichem. Yeah, you must afflict your nefashis. In other words, what your nefesh is accustomed to. That's what you've got to go out of. It's telling also. It's referring also to the neshama. Shiavutu mimenu al yidei inui kol b'chinas oineg murgash. In other words, it's telling the neshama, inishim es nafshei seichem. So the normal pshat is, to be yourself. Nafshei seichem is like yourself. So the Rebbe said, no, inishim es nafshei seichem. You've got to be ma'ana, even your neshama, even your nefesh, because your nefesh is a nefesh l'kis, and it doesn't want a chila gashmiyas, but any form of a chila which might come into contact with some other inyan and cause you an experience of oineg because of the contact with the other inyanim in the world, then on Yom Kippur you got to forget about it. And Yom Kippur, you just go up into a state of absolute withdrawal from all forms of oineg. So therefore he said that inui is not really just affliction, but it's the heper of oineg amurgash. Well, that means that really the inyan for Yom Kippur is oineg. Really, the Yom Kippur, the whole concept of Yom Kippur is how do you call it, pleasure, and oineg. It's just the opposite of what we normally understand oineg. We understand oineg as being connected with some form of experience which comes as an appreciated thing, as we are in Gufim. And he said, Yom Kippur, it's the heipach mizeh. That's the pshat, nisim es nafshei sechem. You've got to be ma'ana, to be ma'ana the Gufim, that's completely moving a poshut. You've got to be ma'ana, even the nefesh, that the nefesh should drop off its normal way of understanding what is tainug. The tainug should be bold, even in spiritual matters, even in certain things. And it's got to be purely an oineg, poshut, shalamayla mikol what you might call harkovis, and being connected with other inyanim. That's a peridike. He said, therefore, yivuto mimeno, even from the neshama, through this so-called inui, through the so-called affliction, kol b'chinas oineg murgash v'yagir leb'chinas tainug ha'atzmi ha'bilti murgash klal. Remember, that's in you for Yom Kippurim. So let's imagine what that is. So that's Yom Kippur. In other words, Yom Kippur is really a tremendous oineg. But it's called an inui because you've got to train your nefesh for that whole 26 or 29 hours. It's too fast. You've got to teach your nefesh to forget any connection with any form of contact with any other inyan, only with the Elokus. And therefore you, as a way, you're just in a completely different world. And Yom Kippur, you don't know of anything relationship with God, only Elokus. And therefore the Alter brings down in what you can call it, in the Kutiter, right at the end of Vayikra, Alter brings down, that's why we wear a white garment on Yom Kippur, the kittel, what's called the kittel, that you wear on Yom Kippur. He said, because that's brought down in Sforim, that's Dimel Inyan HaMalachim. So the Alter Rebbe said, what's in here from Malachim? Yom Kippur is much higher than the Malachim. He said, well, but that's only a start. He said, you put on a white garment, because Malachim, they don't have physical pleasures in this world. But he said the whole inyan of the white garment is pshitas, simplicity, white, that's how they call it, simplicity. But that indicates you've got to go up in those amadrega of oineg, where you forget all combined oinegs, which are in some way complicated with something, and you get up into the oinega poshet. And therefore he said, Lochain hu madrega delena mabod. The Alter writes over there, mamish. Therefore the white garment is also indicatory of the inyan of the liyah in oinega poshut sheiyah be'elama bua. In other words, what it comes to is that Yom Kippur He is already the beginning of that madrega that oilam habo ein lo eloi achila v'loi. Nein, hem eloi shasir. I'm so man to get tired. I'm a of his that there was once an argument in the time of the Rebbe Marash when the Rebbe Rashab was, in inverted commas, a young person, a boy or whatever. You know, he said about himself that he was never a boy. So it's hard to say about these great people, what were they when they were young. But anyway, as there was once an argument between him that and some of the Chassidim, that they said that Yom Kippur is even from Inuit, in the Torah. It's even from Inuit. In Nisan was Nafshi Tzechem. There has to be a certain Inuit from suffering. It's even from Inuit, Shlila. And the Rebbe Rashab said, no, you guys don't understand, Yom Kippur is even from Oinek. It was Oinek, it's Inuit. He said, oh, no, it's Oinek. He was very, inverted commas, young at the time. He said, the Yom Kippur is the highest Oinek that could possibly be. It's Mamish Oinek. So he said himself, so they said they have to go to the Rebbe Marash and ask who was right. So they went in, the Rebbe Marash heard the Shiloh, and he said, well, you're both right. He said, mein Sohn he's more right. So he said that in Nisan, there has to be a certain you have to cancel away and train the normal ways of having anything not to be that way. So that's a form of Inui. But really it's because you're aiming for a much higher Tainug, and really the much higher Tainug is just demanding that you shake off the first form of Tainug, and that's called Inui. That's the Pshat Inui. Inisam is Nafshay say. And so when Sidim heard that, they realized that they were right, but they weren't. They weren't right. And he was this inverted commas young boy that he'd really put him right. He'd put him into the whole idea. And that's the Taitzia. That's exactly what they're Taitzia. In Nisim, it's only the taking away of the earlier form of Oinig, which can be a very high form of Oinig, in order to get to the Oiniga, a person to Achmi. That's the Indian for Yom Kippur. Ever.
But when they first built the first Beit HaMikdash, the first Yom Kippur, they ate.
Yo, it's even higher.
It's a Lord.
It's even higher, That's even higher. And that's even for Mamishim, not even Oinig Atzma, that's Mamish Atzma saying that you can be in a Zamadreg and still eat. That can only be in the Beis HaMikdash, who daughter Mashkila Atzma Shkushute. And therefore, there's a Paschal went out and said, Kulam Muzumonim, L'chayo Eloma Habua. They'll have to be saying through that to the Inu for Neroma Habua. So it's a good question, very nice question. Well, there won't be any. But they were eating, and there was a Gven Yemot, on Yom Kippur, on the day the Korbanos of Shlomo HaMelech was Makrim. It was like during the initiation of the first temple. But that was a Zakila Lakusa. It's like Purim. That's what it's brought down on the Gabi Purim. It's brought down on the Purim in the Tikkun Isaiah. Purim is higher even than Yom Kippur. It's brought down the Yom Kippurim. The Torah calls Yom Kippur Yom Kippurim. So it's like the Alter Rebbe brings it in Torah. Tikkun Isaiah. So the Tikkun Isaiah says that is like a kofadimion. It's not really. It's a word. Kippurim is a word in itself. But he says it's like a kofadimion. Kippurim. It's Yom Kippurim. So he just like Purim. In other words, that on Yom Kippur, to reach the time of a Poshet Akol B'Atzmusa, you have to negate something. Obviously, you've got to somewhere or another negate from the earlier form of going. Although on Purim, it is so high that you mamish with the Atzmus. As far as he mamish B'Atzmusa is concerned, anything can go. You can be held by the same madrega. You can be an absolute the same madrega as on Yom Kippur, and even higher. And that's what happened in B'Shas Binyan, the Beis HaMikdash. That's a good question, but that's the beer, which means that Purim is poor. Madrega she'ein l'tayr l'shaya. But even on Purim, you got to make sure that you don't lose control. You got to be higher than all the Hagbolas and higher than all the beginning, but you don't lose control on certain inyanim. Ain't kind of nothing. But that means that Stam nemen Maschir darf man nicht. I don't know if everybody understood that. So he'll translate for that. He'll translate for that. Right, so Says the Rebbe, that on Yom Kippur we go up to the Union of Tiny Lachma Abilti Morgan. Oh, so that's even what the Rebbe says in that famous Sikha in Chelik Kof Aleph, where the Rebbe talks about the minig of Lubavitch not to wash Suda Shlishi years. And he brings from Mayan Beis, where the Rebbe Rashab said over there that on Suda Shlishi years, it's already the Madrega for Yom Kippur. That's what he writes. It's really already the Gilif and Oil Mabor, Ein Boileh Achilo Loishir, and you don't read that. He said, however, you have to eat a little. The Rebbe said, the Rebbe Rashab said at the same time, you should eat just a little something to show that obviously the guf is still going to be there. Not that this is going to be like some other great authorities held that it will be just purely a spiritual gilui, but it's going to be a gilui to the guf. Not that the guf is going to want a chilo still, but you've got to indicate that the guf is still got a place. And if you don't really eat, you just eat a little mashu bi'alma to indicate that the guf is still going to be a tremendously important machias liyotin. And the Chanami, the Pneumius, the Suda Shlish, on Shabbos is really Yom Kippur. As I said, there will be 9 days, all the famous lessons. Sometimes I said, Suda Shlish is on Shabbos early. There's another Madrigal.
I mean, the Asavin says that the shaman is going to be the spinach from the group.
Yeah, that's another matter. Yeah, Ein Chanami, is Yesh Lema, the whole thing is a Chiddush Godel, so it needs to be discussed very carefully. Because the Rebbe brings it in Sikha with said that what he said that the eating on Suda Shlisis is really just to remind us of the guf, not whether it's in from Achila, is a Chiddush Godel. The Rebbe is also about. So, we can't just broaden that and start making all sorts of other Chiddushim. Over you're right, Semes, it's brought down in Chassidus. And in Ranach, in the Rebbe Rashab Tov on Tes, in the memoriam for Yitzis Kislev, over there, the Rebbe says, Arei Nochanami, Liyosit Lovei, the Iki is going to be the guf. The guf will be, the Neshama will kill Kabul. So, Ulai Yesh L'Tavik, Yesh L'Kasher, B'der Hevshe, V'Tosovin, V'Tochim. However, suffice it to say, it's amazing, isn't it? Nice. Pele. That gives you an amazing new idea what Shabbos is about your meal there, and about Liyosid. It makes you shout, we want Moshiach now, with a taste of its brain. At this particular moment, we really need to shout with a taste of its brain. So I says, the Rebbe now he adds an amazing thing. And he says, V'hinei b'gdei la'agir b'pinus ha'tainu ga'atzmi, k'moishu b'atzmu say mamish. In other words, the tainu ga'atzmi, ha'bilti mulgash kol mamish b'atzmu say, ki'ef sheli oizois alidei Torah o mitzvah. Sha'arei zeu l'mayla gam b'pinus taimei Torah o mitzvah b'shor shonah rishoin. He says, well, we have to say that this Madrega at the Tachlis Aliyah Habeis into the time of the Poshet, that's even higher than Torah mitzvahs, and you can't really reach that pure with Torah mitzvahs. In other words, the Torah mitzvah, you don't have them, you could never even start the whole thing, you never get anywhere near it. But once you've been mashlim from in Torah mitzvahs, then there's another step up, which is even beyond, as it were, the Yinifan Torah mitzvah. And the Raya is that it's beyond the Yinifan Tamei Torah, or Tamei Torah, the ultimate Pnimis, Haburim of all Torah mitzvahs in their highest Madrega. They'll be Liyosit Lovei. And we say that this is even higher than that level of Tamei Torah, of Tamei mitzvahs. So that was it appears that Torah mitzvahs itself is not enough to reach that Madrega. No, it's even over and beyond the Yinifan Torah. If you're moving a Poshet, the Torah mitzvahs are the preparation for you. If you didn't have all the lead up with Torah mitzvahs, you can never reach that. Nonetheless, we're even going to see later on, the Rebbe is going to bring out Dugma, what the Gemara brings, it's the most amazing thing. When one of this person called Rebbe Ben Dudai, that he never kept anything out. Nonetheless, so a terrible tshuva that he did, he got up into a high level. So, that's even more amazing. I was saying, Kanamachim, Laharik Bezeh, and like we say, die on the Shaitim, and we'll come to that in, and we'll maybe mention it. However, says the Rebbe, how are you going to reach the Inif and Tainu Atzmi Aposhut Kiim Zehu Alidei Tshuva Miumkader Liebe Davke Shemagia Befinas Atzmas Ein Seif Mamit. He said, this is going to be always through the union from tshuva. Tshuva mi'uche de liebe. What that reaches, Atzmas Ein Seif. Not even with the oir. Not Atzmas Oir Ein Seif, but Atzmas Ein Seif. Meaning, Mamish in the very essence of Hashem, Mamit. Well, so now about that. What is it attached tshuva? What's he got to do tshuva? We just say he's been through all the Torah mitzvahs. He's perfect in all the Torah mitzvahs. He's even got up to the Madrega where he learns the timing of Torah mitzvahs, how they're going to be, Mishkala, Liyos, the whole thing. And say, oh no, you're going to do tshuva. All right, what's he got to do tshuva about? I mean, he certainly hasn't got any tshuva on Aveda. So everybody's perfect in Torah mitzvahs to the ultimate perfection it can possibly be. He said, nonetheless, there's a union from tshuva mi'unke de liebe. In other words, you got to do tshuva, which means that you got to realize that, like Gabi, what you could really be achieving, everything you've achieved up to now is like a vertical hate. You know, everything you've achieved up to now is like a form of a misjudgment. I won't use the word hate. Like what you could really be achieving, and you should really be if you could, then should. Pretty mind-boggling, isn't it? So that's what the Alter Rebbe said. That's what the famous hymn of the Alter said, that everybody's got to be Bali Tshuva. And he wanted to call all of his followers Bali Tshuva. But then some of the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe came in and said, listen, we've got all these guys that they don't understand what you're talking about anyway. And they'll hear all of a sudden say Bali Teshuvah, so they'll think that all your followers are Bali Avedas and they've got to do Teshuvah. They'll think that we're all a bunch of crooks around here, we've got to do Teshuvah. So when the Alter Rebbe heard that, he thought about it, and then he said, okay, he won't call. He'll write about it, and he'll teach about it, but he won't call his followers Bali Teshuvah. But he wanted to. That's what he wanted to do. So this man, the Alter Rebbe is a chassid, and he called himself a Bali Teshuvah. You were allowed to call ourselves Bali Teshuvah, but pashtus. But those people, I mean, nonetheless, the Alter Rebbe, because the whole Indian of this Chabad is Teshuvah. The whole Indian of this Chabad is Teshuvah. What is it, Shaichu? In other words, no matter what you've achieved, that's only just a beginning, and it's negative. You've got to do incomparably better and more and higher and incomparably higher. That's tshuva. So now, just to finish it off, he puts in brackets, Zeu Yisran Mailis Luchas Achreinas Al Luchas Arashainas. The Matan Torah, he said, that's the Mailah, the second Luchas compared to the first. Wouldn't the Avs done a lot better? He wouldn't have made the whole thing. You have to have a whole mass. The third, the thing, and then there was the Moshe Ber broke the first Luchas. He broke them. And the last Rashi in the Torah says that the Avs said to him, Yasher Koichach Hashem Bata. And those are the last words that Rashi wrote this Pirush Chumash. That's the way you finish off the Ganze Chumash by Rashi, is to know that the Avs gave him a Yasher Koichach for having broken the first Luchas. The first Luchas. Elamai, that the Avs still wanted Kaviohol, that the first Luchas should be broken, and we should have to come to the second Luchas. Because the second Luchas indicate Tshuva. And what you got to realize is that even if you hold by the first Luchas, and Cholil, you didn't need to break the first Luchas, but you got to break the way you understand how you hold with the first Luchas, and you got to come to second Luchas. You got to realize you got to change your whole soul. You got to go completely into another world and another gear altogether. You got to be completely different person. You got to throw out all your previous assumptions, consumption, and the whole mass. You got to start all over again, man. He said that's why those Luchas are Achrein. You could have made it without the Luchas Achrein. What was no good? The Luchas were Shein. I mean, they were perfect. So therefore he said that's of Yisron Mailah. The Luchas Achrein, so Luchas are into Matan Torah. Shein Mitzad Mailah is a Torah mitzvah. The first Luchas are like somebody who's perfect in Torah mitzvahs. Luchas Achrein is Hein Mailah is a Tshuva. He said, you got to start all over again. The way Nitnu, B'Yom Kippurim, Moshe Rabbeinu, got finally the Luchas Achrenis. Finally, she gave him to him Yom Kippur, and he brought him down. L'mochas Yom Kippur. Orim shehuinin slichas avenas v'yud gimel midas harachmim shehimshich Moshe. It's well known that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the yud gimel midas harachmim, and that is the forgivingness of all the avenas. What is it? Avenas? You're talking about people that they held by the first Lord. Everybody was perfect. The Gemara says that they lost all their impurities and everything. They're perfect, and this was avenas. Now, avenas means something that's not yet on the Emerson road. That's what's put down. That's why it is that the second luchas were given Dafka on Yom Kippur, putting because that's a Tainuga. That's how they call it, the Tainug Bilti Murgash Kolo Be'atzmus Mamish, and therefore it's put down that those Yud Gimel Midas Harachim that Moshe Rabbeinu was Mamshi. For the Luchas Hashniyas are not the same Luchas, not the same Yud Gimel Midas Harachim that you think. The Yud Gimel Midas Harachim you think the Moshe Rabbeinu was Mamshi, was the ones that are written in the davening. Hashem Keil Racham Chanunu Ein Nachman. Moshe Rabbeinu was Mamshi there. But there's an even higher Luchas Yud Gimel Midas Harachim. What they call the Yud Gimel Midas Harachim. Wow. They're called the Yud Gimel Midas Harachim of Micha. They're brought down in Micha, Novi, Mikael, Chamecha, the Eva, Pesha, Shayas, Nachlose. It's also Yud Gimel. But you know, when you go to Tashlich, you ever seen the Nusach of Tashlich? It's got the ordinary, comes the ordinary Yud Gimel Midas, and across the top of them, the Yud Gimel Midas of Micha. Yud Gimel Midas of Micha. So the Alter Rebbe says in the Siddur, that the Emerson Yud Gimel Zamayim that Moshe Rabbeinu was Mamshir, and that's Meir on Yom Kippurim, the fact Tfilas Nila on Yom Kippurim, but that's the second Yud Gimel Midas Harachim, and that's the Indian of Puri Mitzvah Aliyah on the Shomer. It's the same thing to the Alter. In other words, it's the Indian of an Emerson Tshuva where you just go up and up and up, purely to get out of where you are and just keep going and going and going. But that is the Indian of the Emerson Yud Gimel L'Samachim Shehim Shik Moshe. That's what he brings down over there. That's what the Rebbe means here. And that stuff you got to do with the Luchas Achreinos. And that's what you say. Everything I've achieved up to now, that's Klum, V'ayim Wo'efes. Now what we've got to do is really start moving. And as soon as you start moving, you say, oh no, but that is V'ayim Wo'efes. I got to really start moving. That's what you say for the rest of your life. I got to start moving. And you do. If you do start moving, and you get a tremendous new gear, then it was does. Higher and higher. That's what the Alter. That's what he wanted. That's what he says here.
You answered Yitzhak's question about Baal Shem Tov story.
What did you say about the Baal Shem Tov?
With the Steinel and the...
So the Rebbe once spoke about that, you know, the famous Kohen in Toshim Mem Hey. The Rebbe said, you got to be able to keep your hats on. The Rebbe said, the Yarmulke said, whatever. The Rebbe said that that doesn't mean Cholila, somebody was just, eating sort of Shabbos, just to have a good time. He said, anyway, even if you do, you don't really cause any unique to the Chitzin, like we saw here. That wasn't me. He said, the reason why the Baal Shem Tov showed him that, because the whole Inif and the Chila Shtia on Shabbos, even with all its miles, it's only a certain level in Shabbos. It's not the immediate thing in Shabbos. The Emerson in Shabbos is Mamish Eilam Po, going up into Matregas and that. And therefore, he said, if somebody makes a whole big union out of the Sudas, the Sudas of Shabbos, this is a tremendously important union. This is cured from the Ikka of the Shabbos. Then in a very delicate way, he looks like a ox. So it's done in a very delicate way. And the Rebbe said, you got to realize that on Shabbos, there's really no achila at all. You have to eat in order to be kind of this union, a famous secret. So you got to show, he thought he got it all worked out, now he got blown up again. The Rebbe said, and that's where you know that sometimes there's some Shabboses, the Rebbe never ate to the Shabbos. No way. And she gets it. used to come down in winter Shabbos. I was there. Shabbos Chanukah, and I was there Shabbos Kislev. The Rebbe used to come down in the winter Shabbos. He used to make kiddush for bring mamish till the Shkia, and they used to daven minchah when it's already dark. The Rebbe used to bring, and then daven minchah, and then he would go up to his office and stay there for quite a while, and then he would go. And so he didn't eat any sort of Shabbos. He just Shabbos. So where's the sort of Shabbos? I said, if you put an emphasis on sort of Shabbos, really a bull. So take it easy, guys. You have to eat sort of Shabbos, but you have to realize that there's much higher things in Shabbos than that. I mean, it's also a high Indian. But if you make that skill the big Indian of Shabbos, is the sort of, then you're very delicate. Well, the Rebbe said it was only Badafas, so he didn't mean, Mamish. And then Badafas. Sure, that's not the Indian one. And I was there once Shabbos in the summer when the Rebbe didn't make it for break. It was in the early years when he didn't for break every Shabbos. A lot of the Shabbos, not every Shabbos. So the Chassidim were worried. The Rebbe went up to his room, after Shabbos to get davening. They start 12:30, let's say, about 2 o'clock. Went up to his room. And of course everybody went on after a long time. So many guys, a bit emptied out, and people went on, and the Rebbe didn't go on until about 5 in the afternoon. Because that's in his room. He certainly wasn't eating a Suda inside there, that's for sure. He sat in his room. He went home very late in the afternoon. He was sorry, after nail on my ball. He was a nail on my ball, but I love it. I love it. Shabbos. Eating and drinking. That's the Shabbos. That's the answer to your question. One of the two got it. What can I do? Well, you guys can take it easy. I would recommend that in the meantime you eat your sort of Shabbos. You have to realize that there are other things that Shabbos says. Thank you.